The Gospel according to Matthew. Matthew, chapter 5. Seeing the crowds gathering around him, Jesus goes up onto a hillside. He finds a place to sit, and his disciples come close, drawing near to listen. The air is open. The ground is simple beneath them. And there, in that quiet outdoor place, he begins to speak words that reach deep into the human heart. He talks about a kind of life that is blessed, but not in the way the world usually thinks of blessing. He speaks of those who feel poor and empty in spirit, who know their own weakness and need for God. He says that the kingdom of heaven belongs to them, that their emptiness becomes an open space for God's presence. He speaks of those who mourn, whose hearts carry sorrow and loss. To them, he promises comfort, a gentle assurance that their tears will not be ignored, that God sees and will draw near with consolation. He speaks of the gentle and the quiet, those who are not loud or forceful, who do not push their way forward. He says that they will inherit the earth, that the world in the end belongs not to the aggressive, but to those who walk in humility. He speaks of those who hunger and thirst for what is right, who long for justice, purity, and truth. To them, he promises that they will be satisfied, that their deep longing will not remain empty forever. He speaks of the merciful, those who are willing to forgive, to show kindness, to release others from heavy debts of guilt. He says that they will receive mercy themselves, that the kindness they offer will one day surround them too. He speaks of the pure in heart, those who seek sincerity, who desire a heart that is honest and clean before God. He promises that they will see God, that clarity of soul will open their eyes to his presence. He speaks of the peacemakers, those who step into conflict with patience and gentleness, seeking reconciliation instead of division. He says that they will be called children of God because they reflect the heart of a Father who brings peace. He speaks of those who are treated badly because they follow what is right, those who suffer for doing good, for belonging to the kingdom of heaven. To them, he says that the kingdom is theirs, that their suffering is not meaningless, and that heaven's reality surrounds them even in hardship. He tells his listeners that they are blessed even when people insult them, speak evil of them, or lie about them because of him. He invites them to rejoice, not because pain is pleasant, but because their reward in heaven is great, and because they walk in the path of prophets who also faced opposition in earlier times. He then looks at those who follow him and tells them what they are in this world. He calls them the salt of the earth, quiet, often unseen, yet deeply important. Salt preserves, protects from decay, and adds flavor. He warns that if salt loses its saltiness, if their lives lose their distinctiveness and faithfulness, their purpose is weakened. Their presence in the world is meant to bring a quiet goodness that slows decay and adds life. He also calls them the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. A lamp is not lit to be covered, but to give light to everyone in the house. In the same way, he says that their lives should shine, not for their own glory, but so that others, seeing their good works, may be led to honor the Father in heaven. Their everyday acts of kindness, faithfulness, and love become gentle beams of light in a darkened world. Jesus then speaks about his relationship to the law and the prophets, the sacred teachings given long before. He says that he has not come to destroy them or push them aside, but to bring them to their full meaning and completion. Not even the smallest part of what God has spoken will lose its value until all that God intends is fulfilled. He honors the commandments and invites his followers to do the same, not as empty rules, but as expressions of a deeper righteousness. He tells them that their righteousness should go beyond that of the religious leaders who are careful with the external details but often miss the deeper intent. This is not a call to rigid perfection, but a call to a heart that truly seeks God's way, inside and out. Then he begins to touch specific areas of life. He speaks about anger. They have heard that they should not commit murder and that those who do will face judgment. But Jesus goes deeper, saying that even anger in the heart, contempt or cruel words toward another person bring a kind of judgment. He shows that the roots of violence begin in hidden places, in resentment, in insult, in seeing another as worthless. He encourages them that if they are about to bring an offering to God, but remember that someone has something against them, they should first go and seek reconciliation. He places great value on peace between people, on restoring relationships, on healing what is broken before going through the motions of worship. He urges them to settle conflicts quickly, to seek resolution rather than let bitterness grow. He then speaks about the heart and desire. They have heard that they should not commit adultery, but Jesus shows that unfaithfulness begins in the mind and imagination long before it reaches outward actions. He says that anyone who looks at another person with lustful intent has already allowed unfaithfulness to take root in the heart. He uses strong images, like removing an eye or cutting off a hand, not to invite harm to the body, but to show how serious it is to deal with whatever leads the heart away from purity. He is calling them to guard their inner world, to turn away from thoughts and actions that lead to destruction, and to cherish the faithfulness that reflects God's own heart. He speaks about marriage and the seriousness of promises. In a culture where divorce could be sought easily for selfish reasons, he calls people to honor the covenant, to see marriage not as something to be lightly set aside, but as a deep, binding commitment. He recognizes that breaking such a bond brings pain and harm, and he calls his followers to approach this with reverence and care. He speaks about oaths and promises. They have heard that they should keep their vows, especially those made in God's name. But Jesus tells them to live in such a way that their simple words can be trusted. Instead of swearing by heaven, earth, or anything else, he says their yes should simply be yes, and their no, no. A life of honesty and integrity needs no extra layers of promise, only a clear and faithful speech. Then he turns to the theme of retaliation. They have heard the ancient saying, "An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth," which was meant to limit revenge. But Jesus invites them into a different way. When someone harms them, they are not to respond with equal harm. Instead, He describes a path of non-resistance to evil in the sense of personal insult, a readiness to absorb wrongs rather than multiply them. He speaks of turning the other cheek, of giving not only what is demanded, but more, of walking a second mile when forced to walk one. He is describing a heart that is free from the need to always protect its own pride, a heart that can respond to injustice with a calm and generous spirit, even while still recognizing what is wrong. He encourages generosity toward those who ask and a willingness to lend without hardness of heart. Finally, he comes to one of the deepest challenges: love for enemies. They have heard that they should love their neighbors and hate their enemies. But he says something entirely different. He tells them to love those who oppose them, to bless those who curse them, to pray for those who mistreat them. In doing so, they reflect the heart of the Father in heaven, who lets the sun rise on both the good and the bad, who sends rain on both the just and the unjust. He reminds them that loving only those who love them back is easy and common. Even those far from God can do that. Greeting only those who are friendly and familiar is nothing unusual. But to love beyond that, to extend kindness to those who are difficult, to keep a soft heart toward those who have hard hearts, that is to share in the character of God. He calls them to a maturity of love, to a completeness that mirrors the Father's goodness. Not a cold perfection of rule-keeping, but a wholeness of heart, where love, mercy, purity, and peace flow from the inside outward. In this way, he invites them into a life shaped not by fear or pride, but by the quiet, steady love of God. Matthew chapter 6. Jesus continues to speak, gently turning the attention of his listeners from outward actions to the quiet places of the heart. He begins to talk about how they practice their devotion to God and how easily even good things can be done for the wrong reasons. He tells them to be careful not to do acts of righteousness in order to be seen by others. When they give to those in need, he says, they should not draw attention to themselves, sounding a trumpet, seeking praise or admiration. Instead, their giving should be quiet, almost hidden, known by God more than by people. He speaks of a secret place where generosity flows without needing recognition, and assures them that the Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward them. In the same way, he speaks about prayer. He warns them not to pray in order to be noticed, standing in public places just to be seen. He invites them instead to enter a private room, to close the door, and to pray in the quiet, unseen space where only God is watching. There, in the simplicity of honest words, they can draw near to the Father. He reminds them that God already knows what they need before they ask, so there is no need for empty repetition or long, anxious speeches. Then he offers them a pattern for prayer, a simple and deep way of speaking with God. He teaches them to begin by lifting their eyes toward our Father in heaven, recognizing both God's nearness and His holiness. They are invited to honor His name, to desire that His kingdom come, and that His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He leads them to ask for daily bread, for what is needed one day at a time, and to seek forgiveness for their sins while also forgiving those who have wronged them. He teaches them to ask not to be led into temptation and to be delivered from evil. It is a prayer that holds together trust, dependence, reverence, and mercy. He adds a gentle but serious reminder. If they are willing to forgive others, their Father in heaven will forgive them. But if they hold tightly to unforgiveness, they block their own hearts from receiving the forgiveness they need. He shows that the way they treat others and the way they stand before God are deeply connected. Jesus then speaks about fasting, those times when people choose to go without food as an act of devotion. He tells them not to make their fasting obvious, not to seek sympathy or admiration from others. Instead, they are to care for their appearance and carry themselves normally so that no one suspects what they are doing. Once again, he points them to the hidden place, reminding them that the Father who sees what is done in secret will reward them. True devotion, he shows, is more about the heart toward God than about the impression given to people. He then turns their attention to treasures and what they value. He tells them not to store up treasures on earth where moths and rust can destroy and where thieves can break in and steal. Instead, he encourages them to store up treasures in heaven, in the unseen realm where nothing decays and nothing can be taken away. He explains that where their treasure is, there their heart will be also. What they cherish most deeply will shape the direction of their inner life. He speaks about the eye as the lamp of the body. If their eye is clear, generous, and focused on what is good, their whole body will be full of light. But if their eye is clouded, stingy, or fixed on what is dark and selfish, their whole inner life becomes shadowed. He shows that the way they look at the world, their desires, their focus, their way of seeing, either fills them with light or deepens their darkness. He then makes a clear statement about divided loyalties. No one, he says, can serve two masters. A person will either love one and hate the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. He tells them plainly that they cannot serve both God and wealth. It is not that material things have no place, but that they cannot occupy the place of God in the heart. The center of their trust must be in God alone. From there, Jesus speaks tenderly to their worries. He tells them not to be anxious about their lives, about what they will eat or drink, or about their bodies and what they will wear. He reminds them that life is more than food and the body more than clothing. To help them see, he points their attention toward creation. He invites them to look at the birds of the air. They do not plant or harvest or store in barns, yet they are fed. Their Father in heaven takes care of them. He asks them to consider whether they are not much more valuable than birds. He also asks them a simple question. Can worry add even a single moment to their lives? Then he asks them to look at the flowers of the field. They do not labor or spin thread, yet they are clothed with a beauty rich and effortless. If God clothes the grass of the field, which is here for a short time and then gone, how much more will he care for them? He gently speaks to their little faith, not to condemn them, but to call them into a deeper trust. He tells them not to be consumed with questions such as, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? He explains that people who do not yet know God chase after these things as if they were everything. But their Heavenly Father knows what they need. Instead of living in endless anxiety, He invites them to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, trusting that the other things will be given as well. Finally, He brings their focus to the present moment. He tells them not to be worried about tomorrow because tomorrow will have its own concerns. Each day has enough trouble of its own. He invites them to live one day at a time, entrusting their future to the care of God, resting in the assurance that they are seen, known, and valued. Matthew chapter 7. Jesus continues to speak to those gathered around Him, gently turning their attention to how they see and treat one another, and how they stand before God in the quiet places of their own hearts. He begins by speaking about judgment. He tells them not to judge others in a harsh, condemning way, because the measure they use will be the measure used for them. The attitude they hold toward others will in some way return to them. He invites them to be slow to condemn, to be careful with criticism, and to remember their own need for mercy. He uses a simple, vivid picture. He asks why someone would focus on a tiny speck in another person's eye while ignoring a large piece of wood in their own eye. He exposes how easy it is to see small faults in others while remaining blind to greater faults within. He calls this hypocrisy. Instead, he urges them first to deal with their own inner issues, to remove the log from their own eye. Only then will they see clearly enough to help another with the speck in theirs. He is inviting them to self-awareness, to humility, and to a gentle way of helping others after facing themselves honestly. He then speaks of discernment. He says that they should not give what is holy to those who will trample it or throw pearls before those who will only turn and attack. He is not encouraging contempt, but wisdom. An awareness that not everyone is ready to receive what is precious, and that they must be mindful of where and how they share what God has entrusted to them. Turning their eyes toward God, Jesus invites them to ask, to seek, and to knock. He promises that those who ask will receive, those who seek will find, and those who knock will find doors opened. He reminds them that God is not distant or indifferent. To help them understand, he asks them to consider their own hearts as human parents. If a child asks for bread, they will not give a stone. If the child asks for fish, they will not give a snake. If imperfect human beings know how to give good things to their children, how much more will the Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? He paints a picture of God as generous and attentive, ready to respond to the honest appeals of his children. In a single, clear sentence, Jesus gives a guiding principle for relationships. Whatever they wish others would do for them, they should do for others. In this simple rule is the heart of the law and the prophets, a call to empathy, kindness, and consideration. He invites them to imagine themselves in another's place and to act out of that understanding. He then speaks about the path they walk. He describes a narrow gate and a hard road that leads to life, and a wide gate and an easy road that leads to destruction. Many people choose the broad, comfortable way, but few find the narrow one. He is not painting this in anger, but in warning and invitation. The way of true life, of deep connection with God, is often not the easiest or most popular. It calls for choice, for sincerity, for perseverance. Next, he talks about false prophets, those who appear outwardly gentle and harmless like sheep, but inwardly are like wolves, destructive and dangerous. He tells them they will recognize such people by their fruit, by what their lives actually produce. A good tree bears good fruit, a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, and a bad tree does not bear healthy fruit. Just as no one gathers grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles, so character reveals itself over time. He warns that trees that consistently bear bad fruit are cut down and removed. In this way, he teaches them to look beyond words and appearances and to pay attention to the outcomes of a person's life. He then speaks about those who call him Lord. Not everyone who uses this title will enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of his Father in heaven. Some will say they prophesied in his name, cast out demons, and performed many wonders. Yet he will say that he never truly knew them, and that they acted without real obedience. This is a serious and quiet warning. Spiritual activity without a true surrendered heart does not replace genuine relationship. What matters is not only what is done in his name, but whether the heart is aligned with the Father's will. To bring his teaching to a clear conclusion, Jesus uses another picture. He describes two builders. One hears his words and puts them into practice. That person is like a wise builder who constructs a house on rock. When rain falls, rivers rise, and winds beat against the house, it stands firm because its foundation is solid. The other builder hears his words but does not act on them. That person is like someone who builds a house on sand. When the same rain, rivers, and winds come, the house falls and its collapse is great. Through this image, he shows that his words are not simply to be admired or discussed. They are meant to become the foundation of a life. Storms in different forms will come to everyone. What matters is what the life is built upon, whether it rests on the quiet strength of obedience to his teaching or on shifting ground. When Jesus finishes speaking these things, the crowds listening to him are deeply struck. They sense that his teaching carries a different kind of authority, one that is not merely based on tradition or human learning, but on something deeper and more real. He speaks not like the usual religious experts, but with an inner weight that reaches their hearts. Matthew chapter 8. When Jesus comes down from the hillside where he has been teaching, a large crowd follows him. Among them, a man with leprosy approaches, carrying both suffering and hope in his heart. He comes close, kneels before Jesus, and says with quiet honesty that if Jesus is willing, he can make him clean. Jesus does not step away. Instead, he reaches out his hand and touches the man, something many would have feared to do. With gentle authority, he says that he is willing and tells the man to be clean. Immediately, the disease leaves him. Jesus then instructs him to tell no one, but to go and show himself to the priest and to offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony. Healing is not only a moment of relief, it becomes a witness, a sign of God's mercy breaking into an afflicted life. As Jesus enters Capernaum, a Roman centurion comes to him, a man with authority over soldiers, yet deeply aware of his own need. He tells Jesus that his servant is lying at home, paralyzed and in great suffering. Jesus responds by offering to come and heal him. But the centurion, with a humbled sense of his own place, says he is not worthy to have Jesus come under his roof. Instead, he expresses trust that a simple word from Jesus will be enough to heal his servant. He explains that he understands authority. He gives orders and they are obeyed. He believes that Jesus' word carries that same unquestioned power. Jesus is deeply moved by this faith. He says that he has not found such trust even in Israel, and speaks of a day when many will come from distant places to sit at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while some who thought themselves secure will find themselves outside, in darkness. Then he turns to the centurion and tells him that his request is granted, that it will be done as he has believed. At that very moment, the servant is healed, though Jesus has not even stepped into the man's house. Jesus then goes to the home of Peter. There, he finds Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touches her hand, and the fever leaves her. She rises and begins to serve him and those with him, her strength quietly restored, her gratitude expressed in simple, practical care. As evening comes, many people are brought to Jesus, those oppressed by unclean spirits and those suffering from various illnesses. With a word, he drives out the spirits and he heals all who are sick. His actions fulfill what had been spoken long before, that the servant of God would carry our weaknesses and bear our diseases. Jesus does not remain distant from human pain. He steps into it, carries it, and brings relief. Seeing the growing crowds around him, Jesus gives orders to cross to the other side of the lake. A teacher of the law comes and tells him that he will follow Jesus wherever he goes. Jesus answers by reminding him that while animals have dens and birds have nests, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Following him means walking a path that is not always comfortable or secure in earthly terms. Another disciple says that he wants to follow, but first wishes to go and bury his father. Jesus responds in a way that reveals the urgency of his call, saying that the dead should bury their own dead, while those who follow him are to give themselves fully to the life of the kingdom. He is not dismissing family, but is showing that the call to follow him reaches into every priority. Jesus then steps into a boat, and his disciples follow him. As they cross the lake, a fierce storm rises. The wind roars, the waves crash against the boat, and the water begins to spill in. The disciples are overcome with fear as the boat is tossed. Jesus, however, is asleep, at rest even in the midst of the storm. In their panic, they wake him, crying out for rescue. He gently questions their fear and their small faith, then stands and speaks to the wind and the waves. With a word, he rebukes the storm, and the lake becomes calm and still. a great calm replaces the great storm. The disciples are left wondering, filled with awe, asking who this is that even the wind and the sea obey him. When they reach the other side, in the region of the Gadarenes, two men possessed by demons come from among the tombs to meet him. They are fierce and dangerous, and people avoid passing that way because of them. These men, though deeply tormented, recognize Jesus and cry out, asking what he has to do with them and whether he has come to torment them before the appointed time. Nearby, a large herd of pigs is feeding. The demons beg Jesus to send them into the pigs if he drives them out. Jesus speaks a single word, giving them permission. They leave the men and enter the pigs, and the whole herd rushes down the steep bank and into the lake, where they drown. The men are set free, their torment lifted, their minds and lives restored. Those who were tending the pigs run into the town and tell everything that has happened, especially what has been done for the demon-possessed men. The whole town comes out to meet Jesus. Yet, rather than welcoming him, they plead with him to leave their region. Even in the face of healing and deliverance, they are unsettled by the disruption and the loss, and they ask him to go. Through these moments, Matthew shows Jesus as one who touches the unclean without fear, who responds to quiet, sincere faith, who carries sickness and oppression away, who calms storms with a word, and who confronts deep darkness with a presence that cannot be resisted.